And welcome to everyone who's joining us via Zoom or YouTube. Social media is just expanding so rapidly. It's hard for a guy like me who's been in the media for over 55 years to keep up to date. I retired about 12 years ago. I want to thank you for inviting me. Especially I want to reach out to the people who are the office holders of Region 8 of the Sai organization in Los Angeles, just right up the street from where I live. It is indeed a privilege, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, to be able to speak with anything to do with Sri Satya Sai Baba, the Lord of the universe. Jody and I refer to him to everybody as our Sadguru. We have inquisitive minds. We poke our noses into every spiritual corner on earth, but there's no doubt who our Sadguru is. And I'd like to right now offer my humblest pranams at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Well, the path to discovering that we are the Atma. Now, could anybody on earth pick a greater topic for which to speak, especially when they know as little about that truly as I do? I chose that topic, and I chose it for a very distinct reason, and I hope I can adequately share it with you tonight. The time for these programs is wonderful, and it's more than enough to get a point or two across. But when you're talking about a subject at this level of awareness, let's say, to cover it well, you really need like a couple of months, or in my case, 42 years. That's how long I've been on this path. And I'll tell you about that reference in just a second. I chose this topic because I sincerely believe it's the most important command, or maybe another word is demand, Sai Baba makes of each and every one of us. Now, he makes plenty of commands and demands of us in our time. He's given us many lessons and many goals to aspire to, and he ensures us that we're all going to get to liberation. But this particular theme about getting to know intimately the Atma of which you are, that only is I'm just going to say it's at the top of the pile. And I'm happy it is, because I'm happy to be in pursuit of it. He says that through achieving liberation is absolutely your birthright, your guarantee. If you do all sorts of different acts that allow you to enter the door of liberation, let's say, from seva. Seva is very, very big. From namasmarana, bhajans, pujas, all of those are guarantees to get you there. Yet I'm here tonight to talk about what I presumptuously perhaps call a quicker way of realizing the truth of who you are. And that's my talk for tonight, if I can get to it as well as I can, with a few other things I want to mention along the way. So again, welcome and thank you for joining me tonight. I did not choose this topic because I'm an expert on the subject. Far, far, far from it. I chose it because I actually believe it's possible to acquire liberation in this lifetime. You don't hear too many people talking about it because the general perception is that not too many people get there. And I want to disabuse you of that notion. No, I'm not there. Jody's not there. We may not make it for quite a few lifetimes to come, but it's all we want to pursue. It's the greatest endeavor of our lifetimes. And along the way, though we may not make it, we are recognizing increasing numbers of people, especially Baba devotees, who are already there. Maybe it would help a little bit if I gave just a teeny bit of information about my background. I was raised in a very conservative town in central Ohio, northeastern Ohio, called Canton, a small town. I was raised in a large family, 8 of us, including my parents, conservative Catholics, the sorts of Catholics who would think nothing about getting down on their knees in the middle of the living room after dinner, no matter what the season is, and pray the rosary together. I grew up with that background. I grew up with that love for God, whatever God was. You know, we had visions of God as the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, we called the third element of the Godhood, of Trinity. The Holy Spirit is a more common way today to refer to it. Along my practice with Catholicism, there was a budding interest in me in, of all things, meditation. Now, how could that be back in the 50s and 60s? Well, meditation was something that some of my teachers along the way, all Catholic schools, grade school, high school, college for 1 year, the Christian Brothers were my teachers at one point, and they invited me to come spend an hour every day and joined a group called Sodality. It's a group of no people. The people who are in the group worship and pray and meditate by themselves alone in silence. And so that's what I was taught to do. And as I thought about it, the more I'm choosing to be reflective and introspective about my spiritual being, about the concept called soul, I found out that I was actually meditating, a name that was never used back then in the 50s and 60s when I was in school. But it's, in fact, I don't think it was even heard of in Ohio at that time. But as the years went by, I started to look back on those formative years of my life and be very, very grateful that I had meditation at a very early time. It led me to what I call cliche questions in life. But for me, they were not cliches. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is it all about? And what's coming up next, Baba? Those are all good questions. I found myself asking them probably, this is going to surprise you, on the average of every week, at least once, all through my teen years and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and into my 70s. I finally learned the answers to those questions. I know I'm not going to share them with you here. It would take another program to do that. But rest assured, I feel confident. I now know the answers to those questions. And it all started with my Catholic upbringing, a firm, strong belief in God, meditation, and those questions. One day, an image came to me that really, really shocked me. It wasn't a lucid dream. I wasn't getting up in the middle of the night wondering about this image. It came in a regular dream. And it certainly wasn't a daydream, although I was an expert daydreamer all through school. Hence my very lousy report cards for many, many years until the light switch turned on and I had an inquisitive mind about all things. But in that formative period before that light switch was flicked on, I had this image of a huge room. It constituted the whole building that I had this image of. And as I walked through this room, all I saw from every place I could see on every wall were bookshelves from the floor all the way up to the rafters into the ceiling with thousands of books about Catholicism. Every question anybody ever had, they could find the answer in that room in one of those thousands of books. It was amazing to me. I still wonder about that image that just came to mind one day. And as I found myself walking through the room in the image, I spotted a ladder at the end of the room. I got there and I looked up to see what's it going to. There was a trap door on the ceiling. I scooted up the ladder. I flung open the trap door. I pounced onto the roof and I felt completely safe and secure. Not that there was any reason to be frightened, perhaps. But I had this unusual feeling of being very safe because I was standing on the bedrock of my Christian faith, Catholicism. I knew it would take care of me as I venture up into the netherworlds of the rooftop of this big room, this one single room building. And something beckoned me again to look up. And as I look up, my jaw almost dropped because I saw what I've described before, because it's the best I can do, as a cosmos, as a universe of spiritual advanced understanding. Every star, every heavenly body, every black space, all of it seemed to have relevance to me, though I couldn't tell you what the relevance was about, except that it came with the imprimatur of spiritual understanding, advanced spiritual understanding. So looking back over the years, I now see that as the first major significant step in my life that led me to Sri Satya Sai Baba. I was very excited about that. I was waiting to discover Baba and didn't know his name and didn't know his form, but it was Jody Cleary, my wife, who actually led me to Baba's side, for which I'm eternally grateful. And here's something I've never said before. I've been asked to speak a couple of times around the Sai Baba world in this country and abroad, but I've never mentioned what I'm about to share with you now. And I only share it with you now because it has relevance to the topic of this evening's program. And that is that Sai Baba arranged our marriage. I'm not kidding you. Jody and I were brought together by Sai Baba himself. There's more to that story, which I promised to share with you in just a couple of minutes. But I wanted to give you a heads up on it because it ties in to why Jody and I are both on this path of seeking oneness, as you are too, and as many who already are. First, I wanted to tell you, though, about two early brushes I had with Sai Baba that precede being able to get on a plane and flying to Puttaparthi to see him and meet him in person. The unusual thing about these two brushes with Sai Baba was that I turned away from them. I turned my shoulder on him. I must have had more arrogance than most people have, or more presumptuousness, maybe more ego, maybe more, I don't know what it was. All I can say is that he came to me twice and I turned away from him twice. Hence, the label he gave me as he gives many people, Doubting Thomas, Doubting Thomas. The first time was in 1968. This goes back many decades, surely before perhaps many of you were even born. I was in the United States SEBA program called the Peace Corps. I was stationed in Paraguay. I lived in a poor village for 2.5 years, 8 blocks by 8 blocks, no running water, no electricity, one telephone, all dirt roads. And after a hard day's work, I found myself sitting in my rocking chair outside my little hut. It was actually more than a hut, but not much more. And paging through magazines that the Peace Corps office from the capital city would send me. And as I paged through these tattered, torn magazines, I turned one from page 50 to 51 and turning over to 52. There he was. And you know who I'm talking about, Sri Satya Sai Baba. I mean, this is 68 or maybe early 69. Who is this guy? I've never seen anybody quite look like this person before. And look, who are those people sitting beneath him? They seem to be Westerners. They look like they're Americans, maybe 6 fellas. Maybe they could be contemporaries of mine. Maybe I could be there and they could be in the Peace Corps somewhere. We were all about the same age back then, the people I saw beneath Baba. But for whatever reason, though I read the article word for word, I can't tell you a word about it today. It's been too many years and too many decades. I turned away. I just didn't give it any more thought or time, except the image of his face, the gaze from his eyes into mine, looking at this photo in a magazine, this tattered and torn magazine, and his name, I never forgot. And when I reflect on it, even today, it's as if that happened only yesterday to me. And instead of turning right, I turned left and turned away from him. Well, fast forward now several decades for my second brush with Sai Baba. The year was 1992. It was my first trip to India. I went around I'd been to many countries as a reporter by that time, but I wanted to go on an around the world trip. I bought a ticket, 6 countries, many cities. I had no reservations made for any particular city or event. I was just going to go see what I could see because I had this huge curiosity about the rest of the world. But I did have one reservation made with a person I wanted to see, and that person lived in India. And I flew directly to the city of Calcutta. And you can guess by now maybe who I'm talking about, Mother Teresa. What a pleasure, what a privilege. Talk about a privilege. I'm 6'3" when I stand up straight, and she's 4'11". I was towering over her. She was much more diminutive than Sai Baba. But she couldn't have been nicer. She blessed rosaries for my mother and my father and my 5 siblings and for myself. And she offered to me a privilege, the likes of which I never dreamed of occurring. She invited me to come back the next day to feed all the old men, middle-aged men, and young boys who were dying in her orphanage. I guess you'd call it a hospice, combination of mission and it was, I'm not quite sure exactly what it was, except that it was a place where people, indigents mostly, went to die under the loving gaze of Mother Teresa, regardless of what their spiritual faith or tradition or lack thereof was. Well, I was amazed, and I couldn't have been more grateful to the woman who arranged this, the woman who had a contact that I knew from Cleveland, my hometown, and arranged for this to happen. And as my time came to leave after 3.5 days, I'm sitting in the car waiting to go to the airport for the next stop on this big tour. And the woman comes up to me and she says, now that you've had the occasion to travel halfway around the world to visit one of the spiritual icons of your tradition, Mother Teresa, I invite you to come back one day to India and to visit the spiritual icon of our belief system. I won't tell you his name because you wouldn't recognize it. And I said, no, please tell me this person's name. I am curious. His name is Sri Satya Sai Baba. And I said, I know who Sai Baba is. And she was floored. I was one of the first Americans, a reporter traveling through Calcutta that she had ever met. And she was very surprised. And I said, I don't know a whole lot about Sai Baba, but I met him when I was in the Peace Corps in South America in the 60s, in the late 60s. So she darted into the house. I had a flight to catch, and she came back out as quickly as she could with 3 Sai Baba books and gave them to me and some trinkets. And you know what? I never looked at them. I took them home on the airplane back to Cleveland, Ohio, and I never looked at them. I knowingly turned away from the avatar of the cosmos. I can't believe it. But you know what? All's well that ends well. And my life continued. But before I left, she said, oh, and one thing more. Now that I know that you know who Sai Baba is, I want to tell you something. Years ago, not so much now, he would come to Calcutta. And when he would come, he would stay in our home. This home has a history of very, very strong Sai Baba devotees. And, you know, we have a guest room off the main salon in the living room and where you were staying, and that's where he stayed. And I thought, well, how nice. That's interesting. What a coincidence in my ignorance. And, just stupidity. I didn't put it together because I had no basis to put it together. I guess I'm given a pass a little bit. But boy, did I come to regret not knowing more about Sai Baba after those 2 brushes. I met Jody a few years later. I met her over a dinner after a spiritual program. I really liked talking to her, and the dinner went on for a long, long time. And we just found that we had a lot in common together in our budding enthusiasm for spiritual growth. And I said, I would like to know if you would be open to having dinner again next week to carry on our discussion, to which she said, no. And I'm thinking, how should I take that? Well, how about the week after that? No. Well, I can make it 3 weeks later. She says, no, you don't understand. I don't know when I'm going to be here. I'm going away the day after tomorrow. This was a Thursday night. On a Saturday, she told me that she was leaving for India to go see a special person, and that she wouldn't be able to give me an answer. So I said, well, you know, I'm a reporter. I puffed my chest out like this. And I said, I've traveled the world. And I've been to India once. And I know there's 1 billion plus people in that country. But there's this chance that I might recognize the person's name whom you're going to see. And she laughed out loud and she said, you know, I hardly think there's a chance of that. In fact, I would say there's probably not another man in the whole state of Ohio who's ever heard this person's name, except for a handful of us who are followers of this person. So I said, okay, I get it. Who is it? His name is Sri Satya Sai Baba. You should have seen her reaction when I said, I know who Sai Baba is. And I told her about the 2 episodes that I just shared with you. And I think it changed her outlook on me, at least a little bit. So it was a pretty exciting time in my life to have 3 brushes with Sai Baba before I really became interested in Sai Baba. And that was back in December of 1996. And she went and had a wonderful time with Baba. After she finally came back to the States and came back home to Cleveland, I got to see her again. And I got to really question her deeply about India from a spiritual adventurer's point of view, and the ashram and Baba. What is he like? Did he say anything to you? You know, so we had a good chance to talk about that. And soon I had this taste in my mouth that was growing by the day of wanting to go see Sai Baba myself. The trip, however, was foiled just before I was supposed to go. I fainted one night, never fainted before in my life, and broke my ankle and had to have a plate put in that. And there was no way I was going to make that trip. I was actually going to be going with 6 devotees, Jody's 5 friends and herself. And it was all arranged. And I was heartbroken that I couldn't go. That was December of 1997, a year later. So Jody and her friends left without me, and that was it. When Jody came back, I could tell that something important had happened. And in point of fact, something important really did happen. Rather than have me tell you about her story of what that important thing was, I'm going to turn it over a little bit to her, because she wrote a long story about this trip. And one small section of it had to do with this episode that I'm hinting at that has to do with me. And the reason why I'm going to read her account of it is because she's a much better storyteller than I am. And also because that experience that she had ended up shaping our lives forever. So Jody begins this part of the story by saying, my 5 roommates and I traveled to Prashanti Nilayam in December 13th, 1997 for Christmas without our friend Ted Henry. We 6 were granted a private interview. Baba came right up to her. She was in the front line at the very end of her trip there, came up to her and said, go with your friends. That was December 27th, 1997. Baba spoke to me first, meaning Jody first, and asked, how are you? Well, Jody was speechless, just getting to see Baba, let alone having him address her. I was so dumbstruck, she said, that I could not speak. And then he said, you think about husband. Now, how many times have you heard people say questions like that coming out of Baba's mouth? I haltingly responded, oh no, Baba, I don't have a husband. Without pause, he said with mischief, I know you want husband. Again, another almost cliche line from Baba, but this isn't a cliche. Then he turned to talk to others, the other 5 members of her group, leaving me astounded that he had actually articulated my secret first inklings that Ted and I might make good partners one day. After a few moments, Baba whirled around and looked directly at me, and he said to me, well, how is that boy? Startled, I hesitated, not knowing who that boy might be. I mean, it could be anybody, but I wasn't married and I didn't have children. I don't have a son. I don't have a brother. I don't have a nephew. My dad, it can't be my dad. He's real old. He's nobody's boy. So he said he was waiting for her to say the next thing, and he was ready to floor her with his subsequent comments. Nor did I know, she said, that Baba refers to all of his children as his boys and his girls. So she's learning more about what Baba says a lot as she goes along. I managed to say, Baba, do you mean Ted when you're asking about that boy? Interrupting this and nodding, Baba said, how is that boy? Now that I knew it was Ted, I said, well, Baba, I'm sure you know he's very disappointed that he did not get to come to meet you, Baba. To this, Baba simply replied, he will come. He will come after marriage. You're probably not laughing at it as I am, but I just wish I could have been there, a fly on the wall, to see her reaction after he said that to her. Later, after talking to others for a while, Baba whirled around one more time to look directly into my eyes. And with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, while pointing his index finger to his temple as if turning a screw, he said to me, I will change that boy. Can you imagine that? Not something I haven't heard said, but I'm sure for all the tens and hundreds of thousands of people who have seen Baba, he could very well have said that more than a couple of times. I could change that boy. Well, Jody was absolutely stunned by that. She said, did this mean Ted and I would marry one day? Did I hear Sai Baba correctly with that statement? I double-checked later with Dr. Sarojini Conjeevaram. I'm sure many of you are well aware of her son who works tirelessly for the Sai organization, Dr. Hadi Conjeevaram, who had been sitting directly at his feet. Sarojini was right at Baba's feet when he said that. And she said, yes, that's exactly what he said. And Jody said, yikes. And what exactly would he change in Ted was her first thought. Might it be that Baba would ease Ted's fear of remarrying after divorce 10, 12 years previously? And mine too, she said, which was after 25 years ago. When I returned home to Cleveland, Ted grilled me about my trip and about my experience as to whether or not I had revealed absolutely everything that happened during our interview. Well, I was forced to admit the truth that there was one thing that I would not tell him yet. and speaking for myself, I didn't have a clue what she was talking about. Not a clue. I did not want Ted to feel trapped or prompted, and I didn't feel either. I wanted him to come to his own conclusions and decisions, so I just watched and I just waited, she says. On February 15th, 1998, when Ted asked me to marry him, I confessed that unbeknownst to him, it was a prearranged marriage, arranged by the divine matchmaker himself, who had predicted it during my first interview with him only 2 short months previously. We were married on September 13th, 1998 at Ted's farmhouse in the countryside in Ashtabula, Ohio. And as I look back on my interview with Sai Baba, she says, it seemed to predict not just our marriage, but the mystical, magical future Ted and I were destined or seemed destined and blessed to enjoy with Sri Satya Sai Baba, the Purna avatar of this Kali Yuga. And that's the end of her brief story about how we came together. Now, why is that so important? Well, I'll tell you. After our marriage, Jody and I discovered that we had both had burning interest for many years in Sai Baba's greatest lesson, non-duality. My interest came before I even knew about Sai Baba that much, and I think hers did too. Well, in fact, I know it was. So what a coincidence, I thought. I mean, amazing. Cleveland, Ohio. It's an industrial, hardworking city where people go to church and synagogue and mosques on a regular basis, and there's not a lot of thought given to that subject of non-duality. In fact, we each had been interested in non-duality even before we started to learn about it from Sai Baba himself. Both of us, unbeknownst to each other, in the same town, at the same time, reading from the same book about non-duality. I started studying it at a critical time in my life, speaking for myself, back in 1989. And I believe Jody had been studying it even earlier than I had. Opposite parts of town, never knew one another, same topic of discussion. So that book is called A Course in Miracles. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of it. For others, it's a brand new concept, A Course in Miracles. Well, the topic, the title doesn't really do it justice. So what can I say about the book? It's a book that ties directly to Sai Baba. I'm living proof of it. I'll give you that proof coming up soon. It's a book that proclaims that all is God. It's a book that says none of this is real. Not that light's real, not that mirror is real, not that wall is real. It says that we are all actors in a dream playing out our roles until we wake up. And it's the reason why we wake up is because that dream comes to an end. And the reason to wake up is to know the identity of who we really are, to awaken to the truth of oneness. Or another word that might suffice, to get to know what our Atma really is all about. Sounds like Baba talking, doesn't it? It's A Course in Miracles. It was written in America. It was written back in the 60s. Course in Miracles is a 1,300-page book with 365 very heavy, very complex lessons. Some of them infuriated me because I couldn't even begin to understand them, whose purpose, I believe, was to bring the concept of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, to those of us living in the West. Talk about a cultural difference. There's one of the biggest cultural differences on earth, I think. Those who know about non-duality and those who have never heard of it before and don't have a clue. Non-duality, of course, is nothing really new for Indians, although I'm understanding that latter-day modern Indian generations don't focus on it and might not, in some cases, even know as much about it as their parents and grandparents. But for us in the West, it causes our entire concept of religion, our entire multiple concepts of spirituality to be flipped completely upside down. It's a big revolutionary shock for us. It's a book about oneness. I've studied it for 28 years on a weekly basis, no matter where I was living around the world. But when I first started studying it in a study circle, it made me angry. I found the subject of non-duality, though I was beginning to understand it a little bit, hard to understand at its core and even more difficult to accept. At one point, I remember, I laugh now, but I wasn't laughing then. I was reading it alone in the living room of my apartment one night. And it was a Sunday night. I remember that for some reason. And I got so angry at it, I threw the book across the floor, across the room on the floor. I vowed I would never open it again. It just infuriated me. I mean, until I did. Yes, I went back on my vow rather quickly. Like 2 weeks later, I picked up the book again. So I opened it at random and read the first paragraph. And I ran my finger down until I found a paragraph that would seem to be the right place to stop. I was playing one of those games. And this is what I read. It said, the Course in Miracles can be summed up very simply this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real, genuine can be threatened. Next phrase. Nothing unreal exists. None of this exists. And the final phrase is, herein lies the peace of God. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. In an instant, I got it. I rejoined the group. I started to pour through the chapters and all the terminology, and started to feel like I was making some headway. And that set of 3 phrases really opened up the whole book to me. I almost felt like I didn't have to go any further than that. For Jody, she went directly from the course to learning about Sai Baba. That's a story by itself worth hearing. One day she just knew she had to move forward now. And Sai Baba actually came into her life in a very interesting way. There was a time when the course could be found in many places, including, maybe to your surprise, Prasanthi Nilayam. How do I know? Because I was there. I've seen it. I actually went to study circles in devotees' apartments and flats and rooms and some of the sheds even, where people were studying A Course in Miracles. And then it happened to me one day. Over the course of 2 years in the interviews with Sai Baba, I got to ask him about the course directly, face to face. About 16, maybe 17 years ago, I felt brave enough during an interview with Baba to just come right out and ask him, Baba, I don't know where I got this courage. Did you write A Course in Miracles? Without skipping a beat, it was a very emphatic one-word reply. Yes. And that's all he said. So fast forward now 1 year later, this time with Sai Baba devotees in tow from Cleveland, Ohio, who wanted to go see what we saw. And they came with us for the first time. And these people also happen to be students of A Course in Miracles. I told them what happened. I said that one-word response really made an impact on me. And he said it in front of other people. So we all went to Puttaparthi and got invited in to have an interview. Topic came up about A Course in Miracles, and I was holding my breath because I wasn't sure if I asked Baba the same question again, he would give me the same answer. And I was going to really have egg on my face. But I finally mustered up the courage. Baba, did you write A Course in Miracles? Yes. It was very, very quick this time. But it was followed by a very short phrase, which I'll tell you about. He said, best book I ever wrote.
Wow.
Best book I ever wrote. We chewed on that for a long time. So now I knew I was really in the deep water of spiritual pursuit, the deepest of all deep water. That was my cue, my Leela, my command and demand from Baba to keep moving forward. Perhaps I read more into it than I needed to or should have, but I took that as my marching order. Baba's life for us is entirely about waking up. Yeah, you could say it's about all the other things too, and it is, not to detract from any of them, but it's about each of us waking up. The Course in Miracles, all 1,300 pages, is entirely about waking up. Your life is about waking up. And, I'm preaching to the choir because I'm sure there are people out there right now who are watching who are awake, who are fully realized. They could be Jivan Muktas. We've come across one Jivan Mukta in our lifetime, a close friend of ours. I interviewed her 3 times. She's there in Sojourns. I'll tell you about her one day. And yes, I'm about waking up too. It's just that I'm a real slow learner. I've been doing this for many, many years now. But I have come to the realization that now's the time. Back then, when I heard Baba say that, I had to really buckle down and become a good student for the first time in my life. The irony is you don't really have to do much. You don't have to pour through books all that much. It comes to you when you put your mind on intending to get there. Again, I'm not there, but I've been seeing things happen. I'll put it that way. Fast forward now to the year 2008, about 3 days before Christmas time, while sitting on the cold marble floor of Prasanthi Nilayam early in the morning, still dark outside, all of a sudden, somebody wraps their knuckles on my shoulder. I turn around and who the heck is this guy? You know, this guy's older than me, and he's in my little cluster of people trying to get my attention. I say, excuse me, can I help you? And he didn't have any introduction. He didn't tell me who he was. I later found out that he's Mike Congleton. Many of you know him from Southern California, a neighbor of mine up the street here in San Diego County. Didn't know him at the time, however. And he had a very, very brief request. I thought he was going to have me move or something because I got a little bit closer to the front of the mandir. But no, he didn't ask me to move. He said, would you be our guest speaker on Christmas Day here in the mandir in the divine presence? I just about laughed out loud. Thank goodness I didn't. I said, what are you talking about? You don't mean me. You have got to have me confused with one of these other gents over in that section or that section. Go find them. Ask the person's name you're looking for. I'm sure they'll have a great answer for you. And he said, no. He repeated the question again. And now I'm starting to really get scared. And then he repeated it one more time. And I said, well, why? Why are you asking me to do that? And he simply wanted an answer. So I nervously thought maybe I should just shut him up by saying yes, and then worry about settling this stuff up later on. I couldn't believe I could hear myself say to him, yes. In other words, I was agreeing to be the speaker on Christmas Day in the divine presence. He left. I'll tell you right now. Whoops. Oh, there he is. He left. And I want to tell you, except for that smile on my face, it was the worst Christmas of my lifetime. And I really mean it. I was never so scared or so traumatized in all my life. And as I told Jody, this is kind of silly. If I had a car parked out in the parking lot, I would have gotten into it and driven home to Cleveland across the ocean. But as soon as that talk was over, and that's the moment that's captured right there, a minute after my talk in front of Baba, 23 minutes, it became the best Christmas of my life. What to do? What to do now when Mike Congleton gave me that command? How do you prepare a speech to be in the divine presence? I'm not an intellectual. I'm certainly no professor. I'm no devotee steeped in Baba's many mystical, marvelous, magical ways. First thing I did was smart, though. I appointed Jody to become my editor. She's a strong taskmaster. Those 3 days went by painfully quickly because I needed to pull myself together and think of what I really wanted to say. In the very first 3 drafts I wrote, I tediously, painfully wrote, all ended up in the trash basket. I didn't know how to speak from the heart. That's what I discovered. I asked Baba for help, and he gave it to me. I finally saw the light. I knew I was to speak about my Sojourn's Seva website that Jody and I have labored over. Sojourn's was her idea 22 years ago. Our 400 plus spiritual interviews, mostly with Sai Baba devotees, 95% of them were with Baba devotees, sharing how Baba transformed their heart and their lives. But this was not a subject that was to come from Ted's ego side, and I could smell the ego raising its ugly head as I thought about what I should write for Baba. Rather, it was to come from the side where there might be a little humility in me, where there wasn't much. I had to go looking for it. It was not a talk about how our Sojourns project was seva for the benefit of others who might be seeing these video interviews. Nope. It was how it was to be seva for me. It was so that I would no longer be a doubting Thomas. And it was a gift that came directly from Sai Baba. What a revelation this was to be for me. And every bit of it was absolutely true. I sat at the feet of dozens upon dozens and dozens of devotees over the years. How they came to us is another story. It's like magic. Baba directed them to me. Over 22 years, I've been busy interviewing these people pouring their hearts out to me about Baba transforming their heart. These were for me to learn from. If anybody else learned from them, that was all well and good. But its purpose was for me to learn from this. And among the many people interviewed were self-realized people. I mean, take it from me, we figured this out. It's not very hard to figure out. You know, when you're in the presence of a self-realized person, modeling their spiritual attainment to all of us with their interviews. My only purpose standing there before Baba on Christmas Day to express my gratitude for his gifts in my life and to recognize that the path to be one with Baba in this lifetime is something he wants for each and every one of us to pursue. Increasingly, Jody and I would discover more and more devotees and non-devotees as well, I have to tell you, who are already there, who are quite clearly, quite evidently, to anybody who's got any experience with recognizing certain traits, would have to say, in our presence is a self-realized being. It is one of the greatest blessings of our lifetime to be able to find such people along the path and to simply feel their presence. And the best word I can describe their presence by that's so strong in our lives when we're around them is it's magnetic. It pulls you right to it. You're all aware of the letter that Baba repeatedly wrote to a devotee called Awake, Awake, Awake. Well, it's long, but there's a couple of phrases in there I just want to repeat now because it fits in so perfectly with what I'm trying to say. In it, Baba says that we've been asleep and dreaming for thousands of lifetimes, and that the time to awaken is now, not to be put off for another 100 or another 4 or another 1 more lifetime, but now. Separation is no longer the order of the day. I separated myself from myself so that I could love myself more. That experience is finished, he's declaring. I want all of myself to return and merge into me, the one true self. Avail yourself of this opportunity. Your deepest innermost urge is to return to yourself in order that you love yourself. Something I found out, much to my great shock, is absent in most lives in this earth today, that people don't love themselves. To become the being, awareness, and bliss, which is your truest identity. Did I not virtually move heaven and earth, Baba says, to bring you to me? I have asked many devotees to repeat the mantra, I am God, I am God, I am no different from God. Several years ago, very short story, I'll keep it brief, trying to figure out where I am. Well, I'm over time already. I'm almost done. I flew to London, England to interview Phyllis Crystal. Probably most of you know who she is or was. She's gone now. I had interviewed her 5 or 6 times in New York City in Hal Honig's apartment and in other places around the country where she would talk to people. She's given hundreds of talks about Sai Baba. This occasion was the occasion of her 102nd birthday. And she was quite with it. She was strong of will and mind and presence. And she was so delighted that she had another chance to talk about her beloved Baba. And she told a story that shocked me. I wasn't expecting this. During the interview, she told me about the most difficult moment she ever had in a face-to-face conversation with Sai Baba. It went like this. Mrs. Crystal, repeat after me, I am God. Silence. Mrs. Crystal, say after me, I am God. Oh, Baba, no, Baba. There's no way I could say that, Baba. If you only knew, Baba, I could not say that. Mrs. Crystal, say after me, repeat after me, I am God. Baba, I can't do that. It goes against every tenet of the faith I was raised in. I was a good Episcopalian, Anglican in the Church of England. And in my youth, nobody talked that way. It would be considered heresy, blasphemy. Baba, I'm afraid I can't. Mrs. Crystal, repeat after me, I am God. And then she told me that she whispered almost inaudibly. And she said it to me during the interview the same way. I am God. Louder came the one-word response from Baba. I'm God. Louder, Mrs. Crystal, louder. I am God, she said, virtually shouting it. She told me it was like pulling teeth, the most difficult thing she ever found herself doing in all those many years. I was stunned to hear her tell me that story. I had lots of reasons why. She always referred to the higher C, the high C, the higher consciousness, the Atma. She always referred to that. You can't interpret it any other way except that you are that. You are God. But she could not say this in front of Baba. Well, that's how hard Sai Baba is working with each and every one of us, with you and you and you and me. He was working that way with us while he walked this earth through the period of his Mahasamadhi. Today, he's working with us equally as hard, and he will tomorrow. He won't give up on this. He wants us to come to that topic. I just absolutely feel it in my bones. That's how hard Baba is working with us. Only most of us really don't hear him because we're not awake yet. And I had to put it together after a lot of reasoning for a long time in my life, and I came up with this explanation. We're not awake yet because we like the dream. We love the dream we're in, for many of us. The families, what a great invention Baba created for us. We have nice homes, even if it's in a small apartment like Jody and I are living in. We have money saved up. We take vacations from time to time. We have good schools and good friends. We love our seva projects that we're involved in. We love bhajans, chanting them, singing them. Yet we're not fully awake. And I concluded, as I tried to reason, what's the reason for this, Ted, that you cannot find yourself, to still yourself? And then I put it together. That's the reason. There's too much noise in my life. There are too many distractions. I love the dream. And I still feel that way, but lesser and lesser so. Once again, you have Baba's word for it, that you will reach liberation, that all these other paths that I know you're involved in as great Baba devotees, with your seva projects, with bhajans, and with repeating the names of the Lord, and with pujas, and by modeling Baba's love for others. You're doing it. You're there. You will be awakened. It's just that I think there's a quicker way, and maybe that's poor form for me to say that, but I'm saying it based on my observations of other people, other Baba devotees and non-Baba devotees who are there. It's just that taking the express train, as I now refer to it, by working on awakening as if your life depended on it. Except in this sense, we want to move beyond our life to that which we already have, our truest identity. You might say, but Ted, what about my seva projects? What about my bhajans and our pujas and our special projects that really improve the quality of life for so many people around the world that Baba devotees are known for? Well, here's my answer. It's what I believe. It's taken me a while to put this together, because I now see it in other people as well. I see it in some realized people. When human beings become awakened, as is happening, I think, actually more often than you might guess, they lose their ego. At first, they lose it 10% at a time. Some people still have remnants of an ego, but many people lose their ego 100%. When their worldly identity diminishes, that's what comes next. They lose their attachments and their desires. They learn about the concept called surrender that Baba talks about so much. When they find endless compassion and humility and love, they draw closer to this vaulted state. Then their very presence among us, as they join us for coffee, as they come to bhajans with us, whatever it might be, that becomes their seva. You don't lose seva. You don't stop your practices. You cherish all your practices and do them from a different position of awareness, of heightened awareness. Their service to humanity, these enlightened beings who walk among us, is simply to radiate love and divine healing. We're the receivers of that. And others around them, you and me and everyone else who's in close proximity. We don't even know we're benefiting, yet we all benefit. And that is happening to us today. And I rejoice in that awareness. And I look forward one day to it happening to me and to you. And if it doesn't happen to me in this lifetime, that's okay. That doesn't really concern me as much as just knowing that it's our birthright. So the question I leave you with before turning it back to Greg is, why can't it happen to each and every one of us in this lifetime. J. Sai Baba.
Well, Jai Sai Ram, sir. What a lovely, lovely discussion. It's talks like that that really help us all move forward in our spiritual growth. And we're very grateful. Now, to take a look at things and get perhaps a little deeper in our prior discussions, Ted, you mentioned that you felt that you are nowhere near self-awareness. And with that in mind, the first question is, why work so hard for something that so few people ever achieve in this life?
I'd like to disabuse you of one term. I understand why you're asking it, and I would ask the same. I would ask it the same way if I were the interviewer here. It's not heavy work. It's not hard work. I have not worked hard. It's not only the most important thing I know intellectually that I could ever do. It's the most important thing I want to do. Just to pursue it has been one door after another. There have been 1,000 doors of added spiritual cosmic insight open to me. That's a slight exaggeration, maybe only 950. And Jody would say the same thing. People say, well, can you measure any difference in yourself? When I first heard somebody say it to me, my answer was, well, yes, in fact, I can. I can remember. And part of it's giving talks on this topic. I used to think when I was back in broadcasting for all those years working for a TV station that if I'm invited to give a talk, I'll write this talk, I'll pour over it and I'll write it down and I'll put it in a file. And if I ever get asked again 6 months later, or a year and a half later, I'll just pull it out and use that. How's that for an economy of words? First lesson I learned was, that's not me. I'd pulled out that old talk from a year and a half ago. That's not where I am today. That's not who I am, and that's not how I think today. And that's especially the way I feel on this topic. So it's a sense of discovery, continuing revelation in life, not a sense of work. But thanks for the question.
Well, that's good. It's always nice to see that it's not perhaps as hard as we think it is. For all of us, our sadhana tends to vary depending on each devotee. And I was wondering if you might be able to share with us some spiritual exercises that you might recommend to someone if they would like to enhance perhaps their own identity of the.
First and foremost, I would say go to Baba. And the last thing to do is go to Baba. I brush up all the time on what I want to know by first going to Baba. How many people have this in their library? I'm sure most of you do. The compendium has lots of references to what I'm talking about: self-realization, self-inquiry. Just go find it and challenge people to start talking with you about it. Much to my sadness, if I want to be honest with you, I've tried to get groups, study circles, and Sai Baba centers to talk about this very subject. Jody and I have talked about it a number of times, and we no longer try. I don't know what the explanation is as to why there seems to be sort of a universal lack of interest in Baba's greatest command for each and every one of us to think about our own awakening in this lifetime. But it's there. And my guess is it's too lofty of a goal to pursue. It's too impossible to think that I can do this. But I hope you heard my words. If you choose to try, your life will be filled with endless revelation that you never experienced perhaps before. At least for me, it came that way. I just shake my head at the end of every year, figuratively speaking, in gratitude. There's other things you can do too. You can practice self-inquiry, which Baba talks about. Baba was a great admirer of Ramana Maharshi. And his book that was written, I think it was 1902, Who Am I? Which, people all over the world have read, really refers to the path you can take step by step to understanding the true nature of who you are. I think Baba would approve of that. There's other people too. Nasagadatta, Eckhart Tolle, there's Muji, there's Mother Mira. Maybe that last name rings a bell with you. And I bring it up for one reason. I don't know whether or not I should talk about this or not, but I will mention it to you. Before I went to see Baba for the first time, I had been a longtime follower of this woman who's thought to be a minor avatar from India named Mother Mira. and she lived in Talheim, Germany, a small town about 100 miles north of Frankfurt. Well, on the flight from Cleveland to Bangalore, guess where you stop to change planes? Frankfurt. So I decided to stay there 3 days before going on to Puttaparthi because I wanted to have darshan with Mother Mira. She doesn't talk. She has no lessons. There's no adornments. All she does is bless you and look, and unties knots, light knots, it's said. But when I was there, before proceeding the next day to Puttaparthi, I found out through Adi Lakshmi, her assistant, that she was taking phone calls. Now, she wouldn't give you an answer verbally, but Adi Lakshmi would say, hello, what do you want me to ask of Mother Mira? And then she would ask Mother Mira and answer for Mother Mira over the phone, Adi Lakshmi. So I said, my name is Ted. I've been having wonderful darshans with you, and I'm going off for the first time in my life to see the avatar of the universe, Sri Satya Sai Baba. And as soon as I started the question I wanted to ask of Mother Mira, she cut me off and said loud enough for anybody in shouting distance for me to hear over the phone in perfect English, go. He is God. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. I didn't even need that to want to go see Baba. But when I heard that coming from Mother Mira, I just felt like I had to go. And there's people saying, you'll never be able to adjust yourself to life and climatize yourself to an ashram and to this holy man. But I did. I loved every minute of it. And we've gone back 18, I think the correct number might be more like 19, but I won't argue about that, many, many times to see Baba. And each time it was always part of the revelation of this adventure. So is there anything else I could say one thing more. Let me see if I've got it here. Yeah. Do as Jody and I do every day. Take your phone, go to the clock, set the alarm every 30 minutes. Why? Because Baba says, if you really want to be a meditator, you got to work at it. It's a lot harder than you think. He says it's a handful of seconds. I forget if the correct number is 6 or 9 or 14 seconds or 11 seconds. It's just a small handful of seconds. He says, nobody can meditate for more than that handful of seconds. And if you do, you'll become self-realized. Well, we've been working on that. I've been working on that since the 70s, never knowing exactly that those were Baba's words. So what we do every morning, we sit here in our little office working on seva projects and working on our retirement because we're old people. We need to make sure we can live long enough, but make sure our funds last. And every half hour, every 30 minutes, I set the alarm to go off. And we take a 5 or a 6 second break to remind ourselves who we are. I figured that's something anybody can do anywhere, no matter how busy they are. They can take a 5-second break just to remind themselves when the alarm goes off who they are. So that's all. I apologize for a long, wordy answer to your question, Greg, but I wanted to get that in.
No, that was very nice, and it's probably a practice that we should all engage in. You mentioned revelations along the way and getting that wonderful sign, and was wondering, as we develop this identity of the Atma, are there any signs, if any, that we should look for as we work on this that show us that we're on the right track?
Well, you can look for them in yourselves, and it might even help to look for them in others, because it's the common misunderstanding that there aren't too many people around us who are self-realized. I've met quite a few Sai Baba devotees. Number one rule is, if they come up to you and tell you that they're self-realized, you can take it to the bank that they might not be. We all have ego, and that would be, in my mind, perhaps a sign of ego. I hope I'm wrong. But how we have taught ourselves is to look for it in others. And I guess we could start applying that same yardstick to ourselves to see where there's either the absence of ego, as I mentioned earlier, or the diminution in ego. If a person can see in themselves how their ego is shrinking and now how their humility is expanding and their compassion and love, not just for others, but love of self. Baba says you're God. You better darn well love yourself. It's a very hard thing to do. I think you'll start to be on the right page. And there's another yardstick that I use, and it's the concept, and Baba taught me this, called equanimity. So most people think of equanimity as being right here. You know, we have a variance here. On a good day, our equanimity goes up pretty good and we feel pretty good about ourselves. The boss calls us in and chews us out for something we did incorrectly at work. Our equanimity falls down to here. We go suffer a divorce, it falls down to here. We have a beautiful baby boy born to us. We get to go see Sai Baba. You know what I'm saying. But true equanimity is there. And it's flat. It doesn't waver. It doesn't go up or down. And once you start to recognize that in yourself, I'm still waiting. I think that's a pretty foolproof clue that you're quickly approaching your own awakening.
Thank you, Ted. This next question is actually about your program and the work that you've been doing, shining a light on spirituality. You and your wife, Jody, have been discovering more and more people to be interviewed on Soul Journeys. I was wondering if you feel Baba's hand guiding you in that and helping you find these people, and are you still looking for more people for your program?
Absolutely, we are. And we're looking also, we want to keep the theme going. Life changes for everybody. And on the spiritual path, it changes all the time. So the focus of our Soul Journeys has changed to include, if we can find them and where we can find them, more people, if not there, into full awakening or self-realization. You can recognize that they're definitely on the path. First of all, go to Baba. Always go to Baba. And it's not that he'll point the way for you to find them. He brings them to you on a silver platter. Leelas start happening all over your life as never before, which, again, I'm not telling you anything new. As Baba devotees, you see them in your own life. Start looking for them at a deeper and deeper and deeper level. I had a Leela happen to me just today. I was looking for a chance to bring it up, and this might be it, and I'll get to it in just a second. But look for people who just radiate this love, this egolessness, this compassion. One of my, not first trips, maybe my third or fourth or fifth trip, I had a prearranged meeting with somebody who works in Prashanti on the Baba side for a long time. Perhaps some of you know him, especially if you were a former student. Lakshmi Narasimhan was the registrar of the university for many years. He worked with the boys in Bangalore and Vrindavan for a long time too. I had a meeting with him. I didn't know what to expect. I thought of this official, this bureaucrat from the administrative offices of the university. The last thing I expected was this saint walking down the stairs, extending his arm like this, putting it into my arm, and almost waltzing around the rotunda in circles, really not even saying anything, just being with each other, getting to feel one another's presence. His smile just lit me up. It's just like that word I used earlier, this magnetic pull to another human being because of their elevated state. That's the easiest thing I can see about that. Look for that in people. Surely you meet them among Baba devotees. And the Leela is that I keep looking for Baba's Leelas in my life to reassure me that I'm on the wrong path. So when you called and asked the topic I might like to talk about, should I go for it or should I pass? I'm not qualified to really talk about awakening to the one truth of who you are, liberation, moksha. But I decided to do it. And then I had second thoughts and doubts about it. So I went to Baba. And guide me, Baba. I'll appreciate the Leelas if they come. Well, this Baba quote arrived in my incoming email box 8 hours ago. It's from a friend of mine in Cleveland, one of the people we took to see Sai Baba. He was a leader of a Sai Baba center in Cleveland for many years. He's a student of A Course in Miracles. His wife is a teacher of A Course in Miracles. He has a great interest in non-duality, as I do. And he never sends quotes about the subject that I'm mostly interested in. This is the first quote on that subject. I received many great Baba quotes from him, but just today, this showed up and I thought, well, I better read it to you. Baba says there are those who think that the world exists and that the world is real. There are others who think that the world does not exist and that the world is not real. Rare indeed is the blessed one who does not think, but who is ever calm, abiding in the absolute. He's talking about moksha. He's talking about no thoughts. He's talking about stillness, as it's so still at the bottom of the ocean. As we reduce our thoughts, because he talks about this to the boys, to the women students, to the throngs of people who come in interviews, in letters he writes. He talks about this topic. As we reduce our thoughts, it creates a stillness in which the bliss that you're so familiar with, because you're a student of Baba, can be found. The bliss that's the third leg of Satchitananda. Being, awareness. Intellectually, I'm starting to understand those first two legs. It's the bliss part, the third leg, that I personally, and I know others are like me, have trouble experiencing for more than a nanosecond. That's what you find. So you can argue about whether or not this is a real world or a make-believe world, and it doesn't exist. It's all Maya. We're missing the point when we think either one. It's the person to repeat his phrase, rare indeed is that blessed one who does not think about such matters, but who is ever calm, abiding in the absolute.
Absolutely wonderful. A very, very beautiful sharing, Mr. Henry. Would like to thank Ted Henry for this very fascinating talk and having him share with us his path to discovering that we are all the Atma.